Welcome back. You're still tuned into your home of humanitarian journalism, right here on Salam Media. The time is 15 minutes past 9, and we're going to be diving into a highly relevant and contentious topic in a bit that has sparked a national debate. The case of Chidima Vanessa Onwe Atichina. Well, she's a contestant in this year's Miss South Africa pageant, and her issue has brought the issue of citizenship and national identity to the forefront. Just for context, right? Despite being born at Chris Hani Baragwanath Academic Hospital and being raised in Soweto, Adechina faces criticism about her eligibility to represent South Africa due to her parents' nationalities. This debate mirrors a recent court ruling, I think it was in 2023, that clarified the conditions under which children born in South Africa can claim citizenship. When it comes to Adechina, well, she's born to a Nigerian father who moved to South Africa, and a mother who has Mozambican roots, but was also born and raised in South Africa. So just to understand and to discuss this complex issue of citizenship, as we've seen immigration become a sore point when it comes to South Africa. We'll be speaking to immigration law expert Ashraf Essop, who will shed light on the legal aspects of citizenship in South Africa and how they relate to the current controversy. Ashraf, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to Salam Media.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity.
I think first and foremost, I think there was a ruling in 2023 that kind of shed light on children born to non-citizens in South Africa and whether or not they can claim citizenship. Right now, as we stand, what's the status quo for children who have immigrant parents coming to South Africa, whether it's asylum seeking or it's on a work visa or any kind of immigration paperwork, and well, they have children here in South Africa. What does the law say regarding their citizenship and whether or not they get a South African nationality?
So unlike the United States, born in the country doesn't advance you immediate citizenship. Citizenship is acquired through one of three ways: either by birth, or by descent, or by naturalization. And this is all in terms of the South African Citizenship Act. Now, with regard to anyone coming into the country, documented or undocumented, you can give birth in South Africa, and your birth is registered by the Department of Home Affairs. The only difference is what type of birth certificate would you receive. So South Africans or those eligible for citizenship will receive an unabridged birth certificate with both the parents' identities on it. Now let's just clarify something here. If a South African citizen is married to a foreigner, the foreigner's name will also be included in the unabridged birth certificate. That wasn't the practice until recently. The department was basically not observing the provisions of the South African Citizenship Act. We also have a situation where lots of people come into the country. Now you have to distinguish between two groups: documented and undocumented migrants. So you have people, let's say you come in on a visitor's visa, you come in for medical treatment, and then you give birth in South Africa. Well, basically, you take your parents' citizenship. So whatever country the parents come from, that is the citizenship that will remain with you, but you will be given a birth certificate here. But the birth certificate will not reflect an identity number. The identity number is very, very important. Then you have a situation where parents are in the country and they have permanent residence. Now, in the past, where either parent was permanent resident and you were born in the country, well, then you became a citizen of South Africa. Because of the close links between permanent residence and citizenship, you basically enjoy, under permanent residence, all of the benefits of a citizen, except the right to participate in the voting process. then in that case, you obviously were given citizenship, but that has now ended. Then you have a category, let's say asylum seekers, who are still in the process of obtaining refugee status. So let's distinguish between the two. Until you're a recognized refugee by the either the Department of Home Affairs or a ruling through the legal system, Refugee Appeals Board, or the Standing Committee, where the Standing Committee issues you a certificate that you will remain a refugee indefinitely, well, then you're entitled to apply for permanent residence. And then permanent residence allows you a conduit to getting citizenship. I must say that those methods were under scrutiny by the Department of Home Affairs, and it's published a white paper where the ministry has taken the view that this automatic entitlement to permanent residence and citizenship in the long term will be reviewed.
Mm,
Back to the asylum seekers. So they not yet recognize the refugees, and their applications are basically still under considerations. Now, I must tell you that it's quite serious because the Treasury has put out a report that it'll take something like 68 years to work through the backlog of asylum seekers. And there has been a lot of discussion on whether, a asylum seeker is really fleeing some persecution, because that is the basis that you can seek asylum in the country. Obviously, war is one of them, foreign aggression, internal aggression, things that are unsettling, like the DRC, like Palestine. And then you seek asylum where you flee some kind of harm, and you distinguish those from what the department calls economic migrants. This person says, look, I wasn't making a living in my country. I came here and I started a business. And as you know, there's many successful asylum seekers that run businesses.
mm,
Then those children, now, because the parents are foreigners, and I'm still speaking only of documented migrants, not undocumented,
mhm,
they would be entitled to take asylum with their parents until the matter is determined one way or the other. So you can see that I'm distinguishing between the people that have come in and are in the process but do not acquire automatic citizenship. However, there's an exception there. The case that you referred to made it clear that you cannot be left stateless. So, in the
mm,
event that your parents' country no longer exists, or is you lose your citizenship automatically, as in the case of Cuba, then the South African Constitution does not tolerate statelessness. So you will remain permanent residents until the age of 18, and then you decide on whether you're going to acquire South African citizenship or not. I trust that that background will inform you of the
mm.
legal paradigms that control these kinds of issues.
Mm, mm. I want to focus on, the principle that children inherit the status of their parents to avoid separation, and how does it play into a broader, citizenship laws and practices globally?
Well, every country has its own laws. As you can imagine right now, let's take the US. There are children born of Mexican migrants that were illegal. The child is a citizen, but not the parents. And you've
Mm,
seen separation at the Mexican border with the US, where minor children who were US citizens were left at the border and the parents were deported. So every country, due to its own laws, will make up its own laws how and who will be determined to be citizen. In the US, the Constitution guarantees the birthright of citizenship to anyone born in the United States. So that is constitutional. And other areas in the world, you can imagine some of the Middle Eastern countries. No matter how long you're born there or what your parent status was, they seem to have carved out citizenship only for their nationals. As you know, nationality in the UAE is only a recent phenomenon. It's about, not the UAE, sorry, the Middle East. It's only about 100 years old now, with the creation of the nation states, uh, after the First World War. So they make up their own laws. So, for example, there's some countries that have the strongest currency in the world with a very small natural population and a huge expat working community, but those people and their children will never acquire citizenship.
Mm,
That's
mm,
internationally. But if we focus on South African law is very clear in the way that I've just mentioned. Now, in the unique case that you've spoken about, I don't know if you want to deal with it now,
mm.
of Chidima,
Yes,
Vanessa.
yes, yes. Maybe we can focus on that specifically, and the specifics around it, because here's a young lady. She's born of a Nigerian father who moved to South Africa. We're not sure whether it was on asylum seeking or what kind of visa. And then the mother also has Mozambican roots. Both her mother's parents are Mozambican, but the mother was born and raised here in South Africa. So, what would be the eligibility of citizenship when it comes to her case?
So I don't know the exact facts. I've been following what's written in the media.
Mm-hmm.
It appears to me that the mother is a South African citizen. So
Mm-hmm.
whichever way the mother obtained citizenship. Now, assuming the mother's citizenship was not legal, then clearly the application will not have been granted legitimately because neither parent was citizen or permanent residence permit holders at the time of the child's birth. So automatically that will fall. Now, it's very clear where one parent is citizen and you are obviously born in the country, then you acquire citizenship through descent. And this is
Mm-hmm.
not something new. This has been in place for a very, very long time. So it doesn't mean that both parents have to be South African citizens. There was a case where the South African Defence Force member had a relationship with a person in the DRC, and the child was born of that union in the DRC. The child was deemed to be a South African citizen because the father was a South African citizen. Remember, you only have to prove one leg of relationship with a citizen
Mm,
in order to obtain citizenship. Now, let's say the court also granted the order that the department include the mother's name and the father's surname in the document. So often, you'd find anomalies simply because the rules are not being applied consistently or properly or at all by the department. But the case law is very clear, the constitution is very clear, the Births and Deaths Registries Act is very clear. There are regulations that accompany all of this. And indeed, you said that the father was in South Africa and we don't know what his status was.
mm,
But let's assume the worst case scenario. He came as an asylum seeker and he remained as an asylum seeker. But his marriage to a South African citizen will entitle him to step out of the asylum seeker's route into the immigration route, which is controlled by the Immigrations Act. And their marriage to a South African citizen depends if it happened before 2004 when the new act came into force. If it happened in the old days, it was amazing. You could come in day one, asylum seeker, day two, marry a South African citizen, day three, apply for permanent residence because the rule at that time was you have to do
whoa,
it in
whoa.
90 days.
In less
And
than
then
48
three,
hours, you'd be a citizen.
no, no, not a citizen. You will be
Mm,
married and apply for permanent residence within 90 days. And a lot of
mm,
people have done so. And so you have that situation as well. So, it all depends on the facts. I'm not afraid with the facts here, so I don't want to go into it without actually knowing what the facts are.
Mm, mm. There's been, a lot of concern with regards to, pregnant women who would be, close to giving birth, and coming to term, and when they're about to give birth, they would be making their way to, Johannesburg, take buses from whether Lesotho, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and make their way to South Africa so that they can give birth here in the country, so that their children are given, citizenship. Is that the case? If someone gets born here from a mother that came on, I'm not sure what kind of visa they would be coming in on. Would that make that child a South African citizen by birth?
Not at all. Remember, we discussed that the specific pathways to citizenship is dependent on the parents. So if your parents are foreigners, you're a foreigner by birth.
Mm,
If your parents are in the country on asylum seeking visas or visitors visas, nothing changes. The only pathway to citizenship is by birth, where one of the parents is a citizen. Descent, again, one of the parents is a citizen. And naturalization. Naturalization is the process that we just spoke about, where the
mm-hmm,
father or the parent becomes a visa holder and then applies for permanent residence after 5 years of marriage, acquires permanent residence, waits another 5 years, and then applies for citizenship. Let's be clear, an application for citizenship is not a guarantee of citizenship. You
mm-hmm.
remember the case of Guptas.
Yes.
There was a fast track of their citizenship. And I must say, at that stage, the minister didn't even know who was a citizen and who was not, because there was a process that was avoided. And that process is that you had to give a list of prospective citizens to Parliament, and you had to announce, look, I'm saying that Mr. A, B, and C will be given citizenship, and it was a public declaration. So citizenship is a very important part of the South African or any country's landscape. Can you imagine how the voting patterns would change if, let's say, foreign citizens that were foreigners at some stage then created, a party that only looked after their interests, albeit that they're citizens, and it could run into millions, and then they would challenge the existing political party. So citizenship is intricately bound up with the security of the country, and that's why it's so jealously guarded. But the woman coming in from anywhere in the world to give birth in South Africa clearly does not receive, the child does not receive citizenship by birth.
Mm. Can you give us, or maybe just share with us some of the criteria when it comes to how one is naturalized in South Africa and they ultimately get citizenship in the country?
So naturalization is only one pathway. You have to hold permanent residence. Now, I gave an example earlier on. If an asylum seeker then converts his status to refugee, a permanent refugee, then the Refugees Act says that you're entitled to apply for permanent residence. Naturalization is dependent upon permanent residence. Without permanent residence, there's no naturalization. The other example I gave was through the Immigrations Act. Now, permanent residence through marriage is only one such avenue. People with critical skills can apply for permanent residence. People on work visas for 5 years and more can apply for permanent residence. People that are financially independent are given permanent residence. So these are all the pathways to permanent residence, and ultimately, permanent residence is the springboard to citizenship, because the
Mm,
Act says after a period of 5 years, you may apply for citizenship. The regulations were wrongly interpreted in the past because the Act said 5 years and the regulation said 10 years, and people waited 10 years. But you can imagine that the Act is always of higher value than the regulations.
All right. I think we're going to leave it there. Ashraf Essop, thank you so much for giving us your time and, just unpacking it for us to understand the naturalization process in South Africa, particularly for children born to foreign national parents. I think you gave us some really, really insightful information, and I think our viewers you would really, really appreciate this very, very important information that you shared. Just like so much for giving us your time.
You're welcome. Assalamu alaikum.
There we go. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be having one of my favorite segments of the show. Remember, this hour of News and Views is sponsored by Africa Muslims Agency. Africa Muslims Agency, a beacon of hope to communities for over 35 years in Africa and beyond. And up next, after the break, is hashtag Fired Up with Imran Chunar, a personal excellence mentor and CEO of Africa Muslims Agency. He'll be giving us a daily dose of motivation for you and I to take us through the day and to wrap up the week. Imran Chunara, personal excellence mentor and CEO of Africa Muslims Agency, follows after this.